Dad announced the family business was being sold for $50 million. I asked, who signed the contract? He said, Summit Enterprises. I laughed and replied, Dad, I own Summit Enterprises. The whole room went silent. You won't believe what happened at my family's Thanksgiving dinner. It was supposed to be this warm, joyful gathering, classic New England holiday at my childhood home in Connecticut. But then, my dad, he clinked his wine glass, and the entire dining room went silent. The words he said next, they shattered everything I thought I knew about my family and about him. He announced he was selling Harper Industries, the manufacturing business he'd spent 35 years building, for a cool $50 million. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken questions. Then his eyes, cold and deliberate, locked onto mine. Kenneth, he stated, his voice flat, you're not part of this deal. You walked away from this family, so you get nothing. Just like that. Nothing. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Everyone just stared. I tried to keep my voice steady, my face neutral. Who's buying it? I asked. He just smiled, a thin, triumphant line. Summit Enterprises. And honestly, I couldn't help it. A short, disbelieving laugh escaped me. Dad, I said, a slow realization dawning. I own Summit Enterprises. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was stunned, deafening. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity before the entire table just erupted. My younger brother, Trevor, shot to his feet, his face turning this angry, mottled red as he demanded to know what the hell I was talking about. My mom, Diane, sat frozen, her fork halfway to her mouth. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone started talking at once, a chaotic mix of confusion and shock. But my dad? He just stood there at the head of the table. And slowly, deliberately, that smile returned. That smile, man, it sent ice water straight through my veins. I know you own Summit, son, he said, cutting through the noise with an unnerving calm. I've known for 3 months. My confidence, which had felt so solid just moments before, began to crack, just a little. He reached over to the sideboard and picked up a manila folder I hadn't even noticed. When Summit Enterprises first approached me about Harper, I thought it was odd. A company I'd never heard of, offering well above market value, pushing for a quick close. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. So, I hired a private investigator. He opened the folder, pulling out a stack of papers. Shell companies, Kenneth. Layers of them. Very clever. Took my investigator 2 months to trace them all back to you. Trevor's face, which had been confused just a second ago, twisted into pure anger. You've been trying to buy Dad out behind our backs? He spat. I opened my mouth, desperate to explain, but my father wasn't finished. I've been playing you, Kenneth. For 3 months, I've known exactly what you were doing. And I've been preparing. He slid the folder across the table to me. My hands weren't quite steady as I grabbed it, my eyes scanning the documents. It was a board resolution from Summit Enterprises, my company. And there, in black and white legal language, was a clause I'd completely forgotten about from when I'd set up the corporate structure 2 years ago. Any acquisition over $20 million required unanimous board approval. Your board votes tomorrow morning, my dad said, his voice almost pleasant now. I've spent the last 3 months getting to know each of your board members. Wonderful people. We've played golf, had dinner, talked business strategy. I've been very generous with my time and advice. My stomach dropped. I felt a cold dread creep in. 4 of your 7 board members, he continued, almost as an afterthought, have agreed to vote against this acquisition. The room spun slightly. Without unanimous board approval, the deal was dead. And according to the contract Summit had signed, if we failed to close, there was a penalty clause. A massive penalty clause. $10 million, my father said, reading my mind. That's what Summit Enterprises will owe Harper Industries for breach of contract. $10 million. I'm fairly certain you don't have that available in liquid assets. I looked down at the papers again, scanning through the details. He wasn't bluffing. He'd systematically cultivated relationships with my board members. Dinners at expensive restaurants, invitations to exclusive country club events, business consultations, where he'd shared his decades of experience. He'd positioned himself as this wise mentor to each of them. And then, Trevor, my own brother, he was grinning now, a nasty expression I remembered from childhood whenever he'd gotten me into trouble. I helped set up some of those meetings, he piped up. Told Dad which board members would be most receptive. Did some research on their backgrounds, their interests, what they valued. I felt like I was falling, just falling. Marcus, I said, naming my CFO, one of my most trusted board members. Marcus wouldn't betray me. My father's smile widened. Why don't you call him and ask? I pushed myself up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. My mother reached out as if to stop me, but I pulled away, practically stumbling out of the dining room, through the kitchen, and out the back door into the cold November night. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the fourth ring. Kenneth, happy Thanksgiving, he said, sounding normal. Too normal. Are you voting against me tomorrow? I asked directly. No pleasantries, no beating around the bush. There was a long pause. In the background, I could hear his family laughing, the sound of a normal holiday celebration, completely alien to my own experience right then. Finally, he spoke, his voice apologetic but firm. Your father made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He's going to invest $200,000 in my startup. The one I told you about last year, remember? You said Summit couldn't spare the capital. I was speechless. Marcus, you're destroying my company for a startup investment. He cut me off. It's not personal, Kenneth. It's just business. Isn't that what you always say? The line went dead. I stood there in the cold, my breath making clouds in the air, my mind racing through the other board members. Patricia, who'd been with me since the beginning. James, who I'd personally recruited from a competitor. Sarah, who'd believed in my vision when no one else did. I started calling one after another. Patricia didn't answer. James didn't answer. Sarah sent me straight to voicemail. I pulled up my email on my phone, frantically typing messages. The responses came back slowly, evasively, or not at all. I did the math in my head. 7 board members. For voting no. The deal was dead. And Summit Enterprises, my company, the thing I'd built from nothing over 5 years, would owe a $10 million penalty I'd personally guaranteed. It would bankrupt me. I went back inside. The Thanksgiving dinner had devolved into chaos. Some relatives were arguing, others whispering in corners. My dad stood in the same spot, waiting for me with that sickeningly satisfied expression. You tried to be clever, he said when I walked back into the dining room. Buying us out through a shell company, thinking you could swoop in and take over without anyone knowing it was you. But you're still just a boy playing at being a businessman. You don't have the ruthlessness this world requires. I wanted to argue, to defend myself. But looking around that room, at my brother's smug face and my mother's carefully neutral expression, I realized something. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. This was revenge. And I had walked right into it. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at a hotel near the airport, unable to face driving back to my apartment in Boston. I spent the hours calling board members, leaving voicemails, sending emails. Most went unanswered. At 6 o'clock in the morning, James finally called me back. I'll meet you for coffee, he said. But Kenneth, you need to understand something. We met at a chain coffee shop that was nearly empty. James looked tired, uncomfortable. He ordered a black coffee and wouldn't meet my eyes. Tell me what's going on, I urged. He pulled out his tablet, unlocked it, and slid it across to me. Marcus has been showing us financial reports. Kenneth, Summit is in trouble. Real trouble. I looked at the screen. It showed a financial statement for Summit Enterprises, but the numbers were all wrong. According to this report, we'd lost $300,000 in the third quarter. Our recent acquisitions, which I knew were performing well, showed significant losses. Operating expenses were inflated. Revenue projections were cut in half. This isn't accurate, I blurted out. These numbers are completely fabricated. That's what Marcus said you'd say, James replied. He told us you'd deny it. He showed U.S. bank statements, expense reports, client cancellation notices. Kenneth, we think you've been reckless. We think the company is headed for bankruptcy, and this Harper Industries acquisition was a desperate attempt to save yourself. James, I'm telling you, these reports are fake. Our third quarter was profitable. I can show you the real numbers. I pleaded. Marcus is the CFO, he said simply. He has access to everything. Why would he lie? That was the question, wasn't it? I stared at the fabricated financial statement on the tablet, my mind racing. Marcus had been with me for 18 months. I'd hired him away from a larger firm, offered him equity, treated him like a partner. Why would he sabotage me unless someone had gotten to him? Someone with resources, connections, and a deep desire to see me fail. I left James at the coffee shop and drove straight to Summit's office in Cambridge. It was a modest building, just 3 floors, and most of my staff had taken the long weekend off. The parking lot was nearly empty. I used my key card to get in, took the elevator to the 2nd floor, where the executive offices were located. Marcus's office door was locked, but I had a master key. His desk was neat, organized. His computer was password protected, but I knew the password. He'd told me once, casually, during a late-night working session, people are careless about security when they trust you. Oh, the irony. I logged into his system and started searching. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There was a folder buried in his documents labeled Board Presentations. Inside were dozens of files, doctored financial statements showing losses where there were gains, fabricated expense reports, made-up client cancellations. But the real statements were there, too, hidden in encrypted files. I'd spent enough time around computers to recognize basic encryption when I saw it. It took me 20 minutes and 3 different password attempts before I got in. The real numbers showed exactly what I knew. Summit was healthy, growing, profitable. I downloaded everything to a flash drive. Then I kept digging. In his email archives, I found wire transfer confirmations. My father had been paying Marcus $20,000 a month for the past 6 months. $120,000 total, with more promised. And then I found the email thread that made my blood run cold. Messages between Marcus and Trevor, my brother. They went back 8 months. Trevor had been feeding Marcus inside information about Harper Industries, client lists, proprietary manufacturing processes, strategic plans, everything I would need to know to make Summit competitive with my father's company. This wasn't just about the Thanksgiving announcement. This had been planned for months. My father and brother had systematically set out to destroy me. I copied everything, encrypted the files on my flash drive, and locked Marcus's office behind me. My phone buzzed as I walked back to my car. A text from Trevor. Board votes in 2 hours. Hope you've made peace with failure. I drove back to Connecticut, not to my parents' house, but to Trevor's place, a modern townhouse in a development 20 minutes away. His car was in the driveway. I parked behind it, blocking him in, and knocked on the door. He opened it with a smirk. Come to beg. Why? I asked, my voice raw. Just tell me why. He leaned against the doorframe, casual, relaxed. You really don't know, Kenneth? You've always been the golden child. Dad wanted you to take over Harper Industries. You were supposed to be his successor, but you walked away 5 years ago to start your own thing. Said you wanted to build something yourself. Prove you could do it without the family name. So, you decided to destroy me for that. I shot back. I decided to show Dad that I'm the son he should have valued all along. When you left, I finally got his attention. I've been running operations at Harper for 4 years now, but you know what he says to me at least once a week? Kenneth would have done it differently. Kenneth had better instincts. Kenneth, do you have any idea what that's like? He sneered. So this is jealousy. This is justice. You abandoned us. You get nothing. The door behind him opened wider and my mother appeared. I expected her to intervene, to tell Trevor he'd gone too far. Instead, she looked at me with eyes as cold as a winter morning. You chose money over family, Kenneth, she said, her voice devoid of warmth. You walked away from everything your father built. You broke his heart. I wanted to build my own path. That's not a crime. I retorted. And now you're trying to steal his company out from under him, she continued, using shell corporations and legal tricks. You think we don't see what you are? I stared at her, this woman who'd raised me, and felt like I was looking at a stranger. You're really going to stand there and defend this? They've been sabotaging my business for months. They've bribed my employees. They've fabricated financial records. Your father has done what he needed to do to protect his life's work, my mother said, completely unmoved. If you'd stayed loyal, none of this would be necessary. I found the wire transfers, Mom. I found the emails between Trevor and Marcus. This isn't about loyalty. This is about revenge. Trevor's smile never wavered. Prove it. You've got 90 minutes before your board votes. Even if you could get a lawyer, file an injunction, expose everything, you'd never make it in time. You're finished, Kenneth. My mother stepped forward and put her hand on the door. Go home. Accept what's coming. Maybe someday we can be a family again. But first, you need to learn humility. She closed the door in my face. I stood there on the porch, feeling the November cold seep into my bones. My entire family had turned against me. Not just turned against me. They'd planned and executed my destruction with careful precision. And in less than 2 hours, their plan would succeed. I called Sharon Fuller, my attorney, from the parking lot of a shopping center. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear the tension in her voice before I even explained the situation. "I'm at my office," she said. "Get here as fast as you can." The drive to downtown Boston took 45 minutes. Sharon's office was in one of those modern glass buildings that reflected the gray November sky. She met me in the lobby, took one look at my face, and guided me to a conference room. I laid out everything: the flash drive with Marcus's fabricated financial reports, the wire transfer records, the emails between Trevor and Marcus, the systematic sabotage of my company. Sharon connected her laptop to the conference room screen and went through every file methodically. When she finished, her expression was grim. "This is fraud," she said. "Clear, documented fraud. Marcus falsified corporate records. Your father bribed a company officer, and your brother facilitated corporate espionage. So we can stop the board vote. Get an injunction." I pleaded. Sharon shook her head. "Kenneth, this evidence shows fraud, but proving it in court takes time. Depositions, expert witnesses, document authentication. We're talking months of legal process. Your board votes in 90 minutes. No judge is going to grant an emergency injunction on a holiday weekend without more than what we have here. There has to be something we can do." She pulled up her email, and her face went pale. "Kenneth, there's something else. Your father's lawyers filed a lawsuit against you this morning. I just got the notification." She opened the attachment and turned the screen toward me. I read through the legal language, each paragraph worse than the last. The lawsuit claimed I'd stolen proprietary information and trade secrets from Harper Industries when I left 5 years ago. It alleged I'd used my father's client relationships, his manufacturing processes, his business strategies to build Summit. The lawsuit sought $30 million in damages, and there was a request for an immediate restraining order preventing me from operating Summit Enterprises while the case was pending. "There's a hearing scheduled for Monday," Sharon said. "But if the judge grants even a temporary restraining order, you won't be able to access your own company. You can't attend the board meeting. You can't present evidence. You can't defend yourself." I felt the walls closing in. "Can we file a countersuit?" "We could, but it would look retaliatory. A judge isn't going to like that. And Kenneth, I need to be honest with you. Even if we fight this and win eventually, the damage is done today. Your board votes in less than 2 hours. If they vote no, Summit owes that $10 million penalty. Your company doesn't have that kind of cash available, especially with your accounts about to be frozen." I slumped back in my chair. Everything I'd built, 5 years of work, was crumbling in real time. "What do I do?" "You go to that board meeting," Sharon said, her voice firm. "You present what evidence you can. You try to convince them. It's the only shot you have." The board meeting was at 11 o'clock in a conference room at a hotel near the Cambridge office. I arrived at 10:55. The 7 board members were already there, sitting around a long table. Marcus stood at the head, a presentation pulled up on the screen behind him. When I walked in, the room went quiet. "Kenneth," Marcus said smoothly, "we weren't sure you'd make it." Of course I made it. This is my company. I moved to take my usual seat, but Marcus held up a hand. "Actually, as this meeting concerns your proposed acquisition and your judgment as CEO, we felt it would be appropriate for you to present your case and then step out while we deliberate and vote. That's not how we've ever done this." Patricia spoke up from her seat. "Kenneth, we've reviewed the financial reports. We've seen Summit's performance over the past 6 months. We're concerned about the direction of the company and whether this acquisition is wise." I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. "The financial reports you've seen are fabricated. Marcus has been creating false documents and hiding the real numbers. I have proof right here." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Members of the board," he said, his voice calm and controlled, "what you're witnessing is exactly what I warned you about. Kenneth has become paranoid and erratic. When faced with legitimate concerns about his leadership, he's resorting to conspiracy theories and accusations. These aren't theories. I have the files from your computer, Marcus. The real financial statements showing Summit is profitable. The fake ones you've been showing the board. Wire transfers from my father paying you off. Kenneth illegally accessed my computer, Marcus said, pulling out his phone and showing the screen to the board members nearest him. I changed all the passwords yesterday after I became concerned about data security. I filed a police report this morning reporting that someone hacked into company systems overnight. The IT logs show unauthorized access from my office at 6:30 this morning. My mouth went dry. I'm the CEO. I have access rights. Not according to the corporate structure documents we filed with the state, Marcus said, pulling up another document on the screen. It showed Summit's organizational chart. According to this version, Marcus was listed as CEO and I was listed as a consultant. That's not right. I'm the CEO. I founded this company. The paperwork tells a different story, Marcus said. And now you're claiming you broke into my office and accessed my computer without authorization. That's corporate espionage, Kenneth. That's a crime. James stood up. I think we've heard enough. Kenneth, we're going to need you to wait outside while we vote. You can't do this. Just look at the flash drive. Look at the evidence. Evidence obtained through illegal means, Marcus countered. Even if there was anything legitimate on there, it's inadmissible. You've compromised yourself, Kenneth. Patricia wouldn't look at me. Sarah stared at her hands. None of them would meet my eyes. Security appeared at the door. Not my security, not people I'd hired. Building security, responding to Marcus's earlier call. They escorted me out of the conference room into the hallway. Through the door's window, I could see the board members gathering around the table, their faces serious. The vote took 12 minutes. Marcus opened the door and looked at me with an expression that might have been sympathy if I didn't know better. The vote was 4 against, 2 in favor, 1 abstention. The acquisition is rejected. He handed me a printed document. As CFO, I'm required to inform you that Summit Enterprises is now obligated to pay a $10 million penalty to Harper Industries for breach of contract. Given our current cash position and the pending litigation, I'm recommending we file for bankruptcy protection. You're destroying the company. I yelled, my voice cracking. I'm trying to save what's left of it. If you'll excuse me, I have calls to make. He went back into the conference room and closed the door. I stood in that hallway, numb, as my phone started buzzing. Text messages, emails, notifications. The news was spreading fast. Summit Enterprises had failed to close a major acquisition. Questions about financial stability, concerns from clients. One by one, I watched partnerships start to fall apart. Then my phone rang. My bank. Our accounts had been frozen pending an investigation into alleged fraud. I couldn't access company funds, couldn't make payroll, couldn't pay vendors. Another call. My girlfriend Jessica. She'd seen the news articles starting to pop up online. Articles that painted me as an ungrateful son who'd stolen from his family's business and was now facing legal consequences. Kenneth, is this true? She asked, her voice tight. Did you steal from your father? No, Jessica, it's complicated. But no, I didn't steal anything. Your own family is saying this. Your father filed a lawsuit. Why would he lie? Because he's protecting himself. Because there's a lot you don't understand. I can't be with someone who's dishonest, Kenneth. I can't be with someone who steals from their own family. I'm sorry. She hung up. I stood in that hotel hallway as my entire life collapsed. My company was finished. My reputation was destroyed. My girlfriend had left me. My family had orchestrated all of it. And I was facing potential criminal charges for accessing my own company's computer systems. Another email notification, my landlord. Because of the pending litigation and the frozen bank accounts, he wanted an additional security deposit of $10,000 or he'd begin eviction proceedings. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my phone in my hands, watching everything I'd built turn to dust. I spent Saturday in my apartment, which suddenly felt temporary and unstable. The calls kept coming, vendors demanding payment, employees asking if the rumors were true, if they should start looking for other jobs, business partners wanting to distance themselves from the scandal. On Sunday morning, the police came to my door. Detective Morrison was polite but firm. He wanted to ask me questions about Marcus's police report regarding computer fraud. I explained I was the CEO, that I had access rights to company systems. The detective took notes, his expression neutral. According to the employment records we received, you're listed as a consultant, not CEO, in the most recent corporate filings, he said. That's the issue here. You access computer systems belonging to someone else without authorization. Those filings are fraudulent. I founded Summit. I own 40% of the company. That's a matter for civil court, sir. From a criminal standpoint, if you access systems you weren't authorized to access, that's a crime under Massachusetts law. Computer fraud can carry up to 5 years in prison. Sharon arrived 20 minutes later, looking exhausted. She'd been working all weekend. She advised me not to answer any more questions, and the detective left with a warning not to leave the state. After he was gone, Sharon sat at my kitchen table and pulled out her laptop. Kenneth, we need to talk about what happens next. The media has picked up this story. There are articles calling you an entitled son who tried to steal from his immigrant father's business. My dad isn't an immigrant. He was born in Pennsylvania. I interrupted. I know that. But the narrative that's forming online doesn't care about facts. Social media is destroying you. There are Twitter threads, Facebook posts, think pieces about entitled wealthy kids. Your name is being dragged through mud. She showed me her screen. I'd been trending overnight. Thousands of comments, most of them vicious. People who'd never met me calling me a thief, a liar, a disgrace. There's more, Sharon said gently. If the district attorney decides to file charges, you'll be arrested. You'll need to post bail. And Kenneth, the civil lawsuit your father filed could take years to resolve. Even if we win, the legal fees alone will be hundreds of thousands of dollars. What about Summit? Can we save the company? She shook her head. Your remaining clients have been canceling contracts all weekend. I spoke with James this morning. 3 of your key employees have already resigned. The company is in freefall. And with the accounts frozen and that $10 million penalty hanging over everything, bankruptcy might be inevitable. I felt hollowed out, empty. My dad has been paying Marcus $20,000 a month for 6 months. That's conspiracy, right? That's criminal. It is, Sharon agreed. But proving it and getting charges filed takes time. Meanwhile, you're the one facing immediate criminal liability. The system doesn't move fast, Kenneth. And your father has expensive lawyers who know how to slow things down even more. Monday morning, I met with Helen, my accountant. She'd spent the weekend reviewing Summit's finances and my personal assets. The news wasn't good. Summit Enterprises owes the $10 million penalty, she said. With the accounts frozen and clients canceling, the company can't pay its obligations. Bankruptcy is the only option for the business. But Kenneth, you personally guaranteed the company's debts when you set up the corporate structure. I know your personal assets total about $2 million. Your apartment, your car, your savings, and investment accounts. That leaves you $8 million short. And with your father's lawsuit claiming $30 million in damages, if he wins, you'll be in debt for the rest of your life. If I declare bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy will eliminate most debts, I pointed out, but not the civil judgment. If your father wins his lawsuit and bankruptcy stays on your record for years, it'll be nearly impossible to get credit, start another business, or recover professionally. Your reputation in the business community will be finished. I stared at the spreadsheet on her laptop. Numbers that represented the complete destruction of everything I'd worked for. What would you do, Helen? She was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, a lot of people in your situation would consider settling with your father. Admit some fault. Negotiate the penalty down. Try to make this go away. Admit to something I didn't do. I said, shocked. Sometimes that's how the world works, Kenneth. It's not fair, but it's reality. That afternoon, my business partner in a side venture called. We'd been developing a software project together, something unrelated to Summit. He wanted to dissolve the partnership. Kenneth, I can't be associated with this mess. My other investors are already concerned. I'm sorry, but I need to distance myself. One by one, every professional relationship I had was severing. People I'd worked with, trusted, built things with. All of them running for the exits. By Monday evening, I was alone in my apartment with an eviction notice taped to my door. 7 days to pay an additional $15,000 in security deposits or vacate the premises. My phone kept ringing with creditors and angry vendors, former employees demanding severance pay that I couldn't provide. I sat on my couch as the sun set, looking at the Boston skyline through my window. This apartment had seemed like such a triumph when I'd moved in 3 years ago, a symbol of success, of making it on my own. Now, it was just another thing I was about to lose. Sharon called at 8 that night. Kenneth, your father's lawyers sent over settlement terms. They want you to sign a confession, admitting you stole trade secrets and proprietary information from Harper Industries. In exchange, They'll drop the criminal referral and reduce the civil damages to $1 million plus a public apology, a confession to something I didn't do. They also want you to give up any future claims to Harper Industries. Sign away your rights to the family business permanently. I pulled up the document on my laptop. The language was humiliating. An admission of wrongdoing, of betraying my family, of being driven by greed and ambition. A public apology to be posted on social media and sent to business publications. And $1 million I'd have to scrape together by selling everything I owned. My finger hovered over the signature line. It would be so easy to just sign, to make this nightmare end, to admit defeat, and try to rebuild from nothing somewhere far away. Then I remembered something. Years ago, when I'd left Harper Industries to start my own company, I'd kept backup drives. Personal copies of my work, my designs, my client development. I'd kept them as insurance, never thinking I'd need them, but also because they represented my contributions, proof of what I'd built. I got up and went to my storage closet. In the back, behind boxes of old files and equipment, I found what I was looking for, a small fireproof box containing 3 external hard drives from 5 years ago. I connected the first drive to my laptop. It was encrypted, and it took me 40 agonizing minutes to remember the password. But when I finally got in, I started seeing files I'd forgotten about. Emails from my time at Harper Industries, design documents with my name as the sole author, client proposals I'd written, manufacturing innovations I'd developed. Evidence that I hadn't stolen anything. Evidence that I'd built most of the modern Harper Industries infrastructure myself before leaving to start Summit. I kept digging through the drives. There were hundreds of files, years of work. And then I found something unexpected, financial records from Harper Industries dating back 6 years. I'd been helping with bookkeeping back then, learning the business from the inside. The records showed discrepancies, small ones at first, but a pattern. Supplier payments that didn't match invoices, inflated costs, money moving through the company in ways that didn't make sense. I opened a spreadsheet I'd created back then, trying to understand the company's cost structure. I'd noted the irregularities, flagged them for review, but my father had told me not to worry about it, that I didn't understand the complexities of long-term supplier relationships. Now, looking at it with older eyes and more experience, I saw what it really was. My father had been embezzling from his own company. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here and there, but over time the amounts had grown. I created a new spreadsheet, tracking the pattern forward. If he'd continued at the same rate, he would have taken approximately $5 million from Harper Industries over the past decade. The $50 million sale to Summit wasn't about cutting me out. It was about cashing out before an audit discovered what he'd been doing. I sat back, my mind racing. My father wasn't protecting his legacy. He was covering up a crime, and he was willing to destroy me to keep that secret buried. I spent Tuesday morning going through every file on those old backup drives. The evidence of my father's embezzlement was there, but scattered across years of records. I needed help organizing it, presenting it in a way that would be clear and irrefutable. I searched online for forensic accountants in the Boston area. Most were closed for the holiday week, but I finally reached someone. Emma Chin worked for a small firm specializing in corporate fraud investigations. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. Her office was in a converted warehouse in South Boston. Emma was in her 40s, no nonsense, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I explained the situation while she took notes. "You're saying your father has been embezzling from his own company for over a decade," she said. "I think so. I found these discrepancies years ago, but I was young and didn't understand what I was looking at. Now I do." She took copies of all my files. "Give me 24 hours. If there's a pattern here, I'll find it." While Emma worked, I did my own research. I looked into my father's business history, searching for anything that might give me leverage. I found an article from 20 years ago in a local Connecticut newspaper. My father's first business partner, a man named Walter Grant. The partnership had dissolved acrimoniously, and Walter had disappeared from the business world entirely. I spent hours tracking Walter down. Finally, I found a property record in Vermont, a small cabin in the mountains registered to Walter Grant. I drove to Vermont the next morning, Wednesday. The cabin was at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by pine trees. Smoke came from the chimney. I knocked on the door, not sure what I'd find. Walter Grant was 70 years old, gray-haired, with tired eyes that had seen too much. He was suspicious when he opened the door, But when I mentioned my father's name, something changed in his expression. "You're Richard's son," he said. "Kenneth, can we talk?" He invited me in. The cabin was small but comfortable, filled with books and woodworking projects. We sat by the fireplace, and I explained why I'd come. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up and went to a back room. He returned carrying a cardboard box. "I kept everything," he said. "I knew someday it would matter." The box was filled with financial records from 25 years ago. Walter and my father had run a manufacturing business together, a predecessor to Harper Industries. Walter showed me documents that proved my father had embezzled from that business, too. The same pattern of inflated supplier costs, mysterious payments, money disappearing. "He did it to you, too," I said, a wave of sadness washing over me. "He blamed me for it," Walter replied. "Told our investors, our clients, our employees that I was the one stealing. I lost everything. My reputation, my money, my family's business. I spent years fighting him in court. But Richard had better lawyers, more connections. Eventually, I gave up." "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked. "I tried, but Richard had covered his tracks well. Made it look like I was the guilty party. By the time the truth might have come out, I was bankrupt and broken. I just wanted it to be over." Walter agreed to help me. More than that, he wanted to help. He'd been waiting 25 years for this chance. "Your father has done this 3 times that I know of," Walter said. "First with me, then with a woman named Dorothy Fisher. She died 5 years ago. Took her story with her. Now you. He's a predator, Kenneth. He finds partners, bleeds them dry, and destroys their reputations when they get too close to the truth." We spent 2 days at that cabin going through everything. Walter's records, my records, putting together a timeline of my father's behavior spanning decades. Emma drove up from Boston to join us, and the 3 of us worked 18-hour days. Emma's analysis was damning. My father had embezzled approximately $5 million from Harper Industries over the past 10 years. The patterns matched exactly what he'd done to Walter 25 years ago. Emma could trace money through shell companies, offshore accounts, carefully hidden transfers. The $50 million sale was his exit strategy, Emma explained. Harper Industries has an audit scheduled for January. A real audit with outside accountants. Your father knew they'd find the embezzlement. He needed to sell, take the money, and disappear before that happened. "What about Marcus?" I asked. "My CFO." Emma pulled up more files. "Marcus has been getting paid by your father, but he's been embezzling too. He's stolen about $400,000 from Summit over the past year while he was fabricating those financial reports. Everyone was stealing from everyone." Sharon, my lawyer, joined us on Thursday. She reviewed everything Emma and Walter had compiled. "This is strong," she said, her voice filled with a new resolve. "We can get a subpoena for your father's financial records. With what you have here, a judge will grant it." She filed the motion that afternoon. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the Thanksgiving dinner that had started everything. But Thursday evening, Sharon called with news. My father had found out about the subpoena. His lawyers had filed an emergency motion to seal his financial records, claiming privacy concerns and trade secrets. "There's a hearing tomorrow," Sharon said. "Same time as ours. The judge will decide whether to grant the subpoena or seal the records. Kenneth, you need to understand something. If those records get sealed, we lose our best evidence. Your father will disappear with that money, and we'll never prove what he did. We have Walter's testimony. We have Emma's analysis." I protested. "It's not enough without the actual bank records. We need to trace the money in real time, show the pattern continuing. Otherwise, it's just historical evidence that doesn't prove current embezzlement." I barely slept Thursday night. Everything came down to Friday's hearing. One judge, one decision, determining whether the truth would come out or whether my father would successfully bury it forever. Friday morning came, cold and clear. We gathered at the courthouse in Boston. Sharon, Emma, Walter, and me. On the other side of the courtroom, my father sat with his legal team, for expensive lawyers in tailored suits. Our eyes met across that courtroom. My father's expression was cold, calculating. He thought he'd already won. The judge reviewed both motions. Sharon presented our case for the subpoena, showing the pattern of embezzlement, the evidence we'd compiled. My father's lead attorney argued for privacy, claimed this was a vendetta by a disgruntled son. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. At the end, the judge made his ruling. The subpoena was granted. My father's financial records would be turned over within 72 hours. But there was more. Sharon had also filed to have the restraining order against me lifted and the criminal charges dropped. The judge reviewed the evidence of Marcus's fabricated corporate documents, my father's payments to Marcus, the systematic fraud. The judge dismissed the restraining order, dismissed the pending criminal charges against me, and ordered a full investigation into both Harper Industries and Summit Enterprises. That morning, the FBI had already frozen my father's offshore accounts based on evidence Emma had uncovered. The $50 million from the planned sale was trapped in escrow, unable to be transferred. My father's face went pale as the judge read the rulings. He stood up, his lawyers trying to calm him, but he pushed past them and walked out of the courtroom. I followed him into the hallway. We stood there, father and son, everything finally out in the open. "You destroyed this family," he said, his voice low, shaking with rage. "No, Dad. You did. You chose greed over everything. You tried to destroy your own son to hide what you'd done. I built that company. I deserved that money," he snarled. "You built it on fraud, and you were willing to send me to prison to protect yourself." He had no answer to that. For a moment, his mask slipped, and I saw something underneath. Not anger. Fear. The fear of a man who'd been running from consequences for 25 years and finally been caught. "Why did you hate me so much?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. The question seemed to break something in him. His shoulders slumped. "I didn't hate you. I feared you." "What?" "You were better than me, Kenneth. Smarter, more ethical, more talented. I knew from the time you were 20 that you'd eventually figure out what I'd been doing. I tried to push you away, get you to leave the business. When you left on your own to start Summit, I thought I was safe. But then you tried to buy Harper Industries, and I knew you'd see the real financial records. You'd discover everything. So, you decided to destroy me first." His eyes hardened again. "I decided to survive. That's what I've always done. Whatever it takes to survive." Federal agents appeared at the end of the hallway. They weren't there for me this time. They were there for him. My father was arrested on charges of embezzlement, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. They led him away in handcuffs while his lawyers scrambled to arrange bail. My mother stood near the courtroom doors, watching. She was crying. Trevor was with her, looking shell-shocked. For a moment, I felt sorry for them. Then I remembered everything they'd done, how they participated in trying to destroy me, and the sympathy faded. The week after my father's arrest was chaos. Harper Industries' accounts were frozen. The scheduled sale to Summit was canceled. The company was placed under temporary receivership while investigators went through the books. On Tuesday, Marcus was also arrested. The evidence Emma had compiled showed he'd embezzled from Summit while sabotaging the company on my father's orders. He was charged with fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The board members who'd voted against the acquisition started calling me, apologizing, trying to explain. I listened, but didn't offer forgiveness. They'd been manipulated, but they'd also been willing to believe the worst of me without asking questions. Sharon filed motions to have all charges against me permanently dismissed. The fake corporate documents Marcus had filed were corrected. I was reinstated as CEO of Summit Enterprises in all official records, but the company was in ruins. Most of our clients had left. Key employees had resigned. Our reputation was shattered. I spent days meeting with remaining staff, trying to explain what had happened, asking them to stay while we rebuilt. Some did, many didn't. I couldn't blame them. On Wednesday, Trevor called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Kenneth," he said, his voice shaking. "Dad's gone. He made bail and disappeared. He took money. Lots of it. Money I had saved. Money Mom had saved. Our accounts are empty." "What are you saying?" "He used us. He used all of us. And now he's run. And we have nothing. Mom's devastated. She trusted him. So did I once. Can you help us? Please, Kenneth. I know what I did was unforgivable, but Mom didn't understand. She just believed him. I thought about refusing, about letting them deal with the consequences of their choices. But they were still my family, whatever that meant. Now, where is he?" I asked. "I don't know, but his lawyer mentioned he has a plane ticket, Grand Cayman, leaving tomorrow morning. One way." I called Sharon immediately. She contacted the FBI. They confirmed it. My father had purchased a ticket to the Cayman Islands under a false name. He was planning to flee the country with whatever money he could access. Thursday night. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father on a beach somewhere, living off stolen money, while the people he'd hurt struggled with the wreckage he'd left behind. Then at midnight, I received an anonymous email. It contained files, dozens of them, complete financial records from Harper Industries going back 15 years. Everything my father had tried to hide. Bank statements, wire transfers, offshore account details. Someone inside the company had leaked them. I suspected it might be my mother, though I couldn't be sure. The email was untraceable. Sharon reviewed the leaked documents on an emergency call. Kenneth, this is everything we need. This proves the complete scope of your father's embezzlement. Not just $5 million, more like $8 million over 15 years. This is ironclad evidence. We forwarded everything to the FBI and the prosecutors handling my father's case. Then we waited. Friday morning came. My father's flight was scheduled for 10 o'clock. I got a call from the FBI at 9:15. They'd arrested him at the airport. The leaked documents had given them enough evidence for additional charges. My father wasn't going anywhere. The hearing that afternoon was surreal. I sat in the courtroom gallery with Sharon, Emma, and Walter. My father was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The prosecutor presented the new evidence. The judge reviewed it, asked questions, and then made a ruling. Bail was revoked. My father was remanded to federal custody pending trial. The charges now included international money laundering, tax evasion, and wire fraud spanning multiple decades. He looked back at me as they led him away. I couldn't read his expression. Anger, maybe, or resignation, or maybe just emptiness. After the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse. Sharon was on her phone, already working on the next steps. Emma was compiling a final report. Walter stood beside me, quiet. Thank you, I said to him, for keeping those records, for helping me. You gave me something I thought I'd never have, Walter replied. Vindication. Proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't the villain. That's worth more than money. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. Can we talk? I met him at a coffee shop that evening. He looked exhausted, older than his 28 years. We sat across from each other, neither sure how to start. I'm sorry, he finally said. I know that's not enough. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to understand. Dad convinced me that you were the enemy, that you'd abandoned us, that you were trying to steal the company. I believed him. You helped Marcus sabotage my business, Trevor, for months. I reminded him, still feeling the sting. I know, and I hate myself for it. But Dad made me think it was justice, that we were protecting the family, until he stole from you too. Trevor nodded. I'm an idiot. I trusted him. And now Mom and I have nothing. The house is going to be seized. Our accounts are frozen. We're going to lose everything. I wanted to feel satisfied by that. Wanted to enjoy seeing him face consequences. But all I felt was tired. What do you want from me? I asked. Help. I know I don't deserve it, but Harper Industries is in receivership. They need someone to run it, to try to salvage what's left. I can't do it alone. I'm not good enough. But you are. You want me to save Dad's company? I want us to save the employees who didn't do anything wrong, the suppliers who are owed money, the clients who trusted us. They shouldn't suffer because of what Dad did. I thought about it for a long time. Harper Industries was the company I'd grown up in, the place where I'd learned business. Saving it meant confronting a lot of painful memories, but it also meant protecting innocent people. I'll help, I said. Not for Dad, not even for you, but for everyone else. Trevor's relief was visible. Thank you. Over the next weeks, Trevor and I worked together to stabilize Harper Industries. It wasn't easy. The company's reputation was damaged. Clients were nervous. Suppliers wanted payment guarantees. But slowly, methodically, we rebuilt. I brought in Emma to conduct a complete audit, cleaning out decades of questionable practices. Walter joined as an advisor, helping us understand the company's history and avoid the mistakes of the past. My mother went to therapy. She called me once a week, apologizing, trying to rebuild some kind of relationship. I listened but kept my distance. Trust wasn't something that could be restored quickly. Summit Enterprises was harder to save. Too many clients had left. Too many employees had scattered. I made the difficult decision to wind down operations, pay off remaining obligations, and close the company. It hurt, but it was the right choice. 3 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, my father pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to repay $8 million. I attended the sentencing but didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving at my new apartment. It was smaller than the last place, more modest. I'd sold a lot of what I owned to pay off debts and start fresh, but it was mine, and it was honest. The guest list was small. Trevor and his wife Amanda. My mother. Walter, who'd become an unexpected mentor and friend. Emma, who'd started consulting for the reorganized Harper Industries. And Claire, a woman I'd met at a business conference 6 months earlier. We were taking things slow, but there was something real building between us. Jessica, my ex-girlfriend, had reached out to apologize a few months back. I'd been polite, but made it clear I wasn't interested in rekindling anything. She'd believed the worst of me too easily, and that wasn't something I could forget. We gathered around my dining table, simpler than the elaborate setup from a year ago, but warmer somehow. Before we ate, I stood up to say something. This past year has been the hardest of my life, I began. I lost almost everything. My company, my reputation, my sense of security. I discovered that people I loved were capable of terrible things. I paused, looking around the table at the faces watching me. But I also learned something important. Integrity isn't about never falling. It's about how you stand back up. It's about refusing to compromise who you are, even when compromise seems easier. Even when the whole world tells you to just give in. Trevor nodded, his eyes wet. My mother squeezed my hand. I also learned that family isn't just about blood. I continued. It's about the people who stand with you in the darkness, who believe in you when you have nothing left to prove yourself with, who fight beside you even when the odds seem impossible. Walter raised his glass slightly. So this Thanksgiving, I'm grateful, not for what I lost, but for what I found. Clarity, purpose, and people who chose to be in my life, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That's worth more than any business deal or family obligation. We ate dinner together, the conversation easier than I'd expected. Trevor talked about the progress at Harper Industries. We'd brought in new clients, restored some key relationships, and were actually profitable again. The company would never be what it was, but it was honest now, clean. My mother talked about her therapy, about learning to be independent for the first time in decades. She'd gotten a job at a nonprofit, nothing glamorous, but something that gave her purpose beyond being someone's wife. Claire fit in naturally with everyone, asking questions, laughing at Walter's stories about the old days of manufacturing. She knew my history, had heard the whole ugly story, and chosen to be here anyway. That meant everything. After dinner, Trevor pulled me aside. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I know what I did is something you'll carry forever, but I want you to know that working with you this year has taught me more than Dad ever did. About real integrity, about what it means to build something that matters. We're not where we were, I said. Honestly, we might never be there again, but we're somewhere. That's more than I thought we'd have. He nodded, accepting that it was enough. As everyone was leaving, Walter stayed behind to help me clean up. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, putting away dishes and wiping down counters. Your father contacted me, Walter said quietly. From prison. Wanted to apologize, make amends. What did you tell him? I asked, bracing myself. That some things can't be fixed with apologies, that he'd have to live with what he'd done. But I also told him that his son had more honor in 1 year than he'd managed in a lifetime. I thought you should know that. I didn't know what to say to that. You broke a cycle, Kenneth, Walter continued. Your father was following a pattern that probably went back generations, taking shortcuts, justifying cruelty, choosing money over people. You refused to become that. Even when it cost you everything, you chose differently. That matters more than you know. After everyone left and I was alone in my apartment, I stood at the window looking out at the city. It was full dark now, lights sparkling across Boston. Somewhere out there were opportunities, challenges, chances to build something new. I'd lost Summit Enterprises, but I'd gained something harder to define. Self-respect. The knowledge that I could face the worst and not break. That I could choose integrity even when the price was everything I owned. Tomorrow I'd wake up and keep working, keep building, keep moving forward. But tonight, I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The journey from that Thanksgiving dinner to this one had been brutal. It had stripped away everything I thought defined me. But in the process, it had revealed who I actually was underneath all the business success and family expectations. I was someone who wouldn't bend, who wouldn't lie even to save himself, who believed that how you do things matters as much as what you accomplish. That was worth fighting for, worth suffering for, worth protecting at any cost. And as I stood there in my modest apartment with the remains of a simple Thanksgiving dinner on my counter, I realized something. I'd won. Not in the way I'd imagined back at that first dinner table when I'd revealed I owned Summit Enterprises. Not through business dominance or family triumph. I'd won by refusing to become my father, by choosing a harder path and walking it all the way through the darkness to the other side. That was a victory no one could take away. Now, I want to ask you something. If you were in my position, facing the choice between protecting your integrity or protecting everything you'd built, what would you choose? It's easy to say we do the right thing when we're not the ones losing everything. But when it's real, when the cost is that high, the decision becomes a lot harder. Think about that, and let me know in the comments what you would have done differently. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own values and choices, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you want to hear more stories about real people facing impossible choices and finding their way through, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories coming, each one different, each one real. Share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's facing their own impossible choice. Who's wondering if integrity is worth the cost. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that we're not alone in these struggles. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you find the strength to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. That choice defines us more than any success or failure ever could. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And remember that sometimes, losing everything is the only way to discover what truly matters.